Okay, so greetings, out bosses, allies, and those on your way to joining us. My name is Rhodes Perry, and I am the host of the popular podcast, The Out Entrepreneur. And I started the podcast a little over a year ago to really get mentorship for myself. I'm about 2 years into being a small business owner, and I thought what better way to learn than by reaching out to other business owners and folks like folks on the panel here. And so, 50 episodes now into it, we've got a real thing. We've got a podcast. And so it's just really exciting to see you. And we've got our live audience also viewing. So thanks to the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce for sharing this live feed out to so many people. I'm really, really thrilled to be here. And I thought, this is a first for me, this podcast, live podcast event. After having 50 episodes, I thought what better place to host this than in Orlando, Florida. I grew up on the Space Coast, and so this is really special to bring this back to a community that means so much to me. And Orlando in particular, growing up on the Space Coast isn't the most progressive place, so Orlando was a huge place for me to find acceptance. And I have my best friend here who's in the audience, Lisa, and we often went to hang out in Orlando, and Pulse in particular was a really important venue for us. And I know that tragedy was forever emblazoned in all of our memories. And for me, I feel like coming here and doing the podcast is a way of healing. And I hope that it's a way for us to demonstrate our resiliency and to show how strong and mighty we are as a community. So, speaking of strong and mighty, this event wouldn't be possible without all of the amazing sponsorships. So NGLCC, MBA Orlando, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Tom, for being here. Appreciate that. We also have Lived and Produced, who's making this event possible through the live stream, so thank you for that. Michael Vonberg, who is our financial advisor. Thanks for making this event possible. We also have the Orange Studio, which is where we're recording right now. So Julio, thank you. And Hotspots Media, which wasn't able to come tonight, but Brett Yancey was also a huge person who was able to make the event possible. So without further ado, we're going to jump into this panel discussion. We've got some amazing business leaders who are here with us tonight. Everyone from working for an LGBT-owned business to our corporate partners. We've got PNC Bank in the house. And then also the MBA Orlando Chamber of Commerce, an organization that's here to support our organization. So with that, we're gonna get kicked off. So are you all ready to inspire fellow out bosses?
Absolutely.
All right. So okay. So this is who we have on the panel. So to my left we have Deb O. I am not going to try to pronounce your last name, but can you say that for us? Or?
Ofsowitz.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you so much. And Debo is from Edge Factory, so we're going to learn a little bit about an awesome business that's also LGBT owned. And then next to Debo, we have Ashley Brundridge, who is from PNC Bank, the Diversity and Inclusion Vice President. Did I get your title right? Okay, awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And then to Ashley's left, we have Thomas Yeagers, and from Ackerman LLP.
That's correct.
And also a board member of MBA Orlando.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So we're going to kick this off. And Deb, why don't we start with you? So tell me what it's like to be an LGBT business leader working in an LGBT-owned business.
It's empowering because I've never had an issue from when I came out in any company that I've worked in, but working with a company like Edge Factory allows me I hope that's not mine, allows me to Edge Factory is involved in the LGBT community in Orlando, and I was involved in the LGBT community in Orlando before I joined Edge Factory. So it's kind of a synergy of that, where Edge Factory already has donated content and services to organizations like the MBA, Come Out with Pride, Hope and Help. But now I'm kind of a part of that process, so it's very rewarding to be a part of that.
Yeah, and also, with your experience at Edge Factory, just being an LGBT-owned business, you're obviously doing amazing work. But having kind of that, being a part of the Rainbow family, does that allow you to stand out and be considered for opportunities that maybe some other businesses wouldn't?
Well, I think the work that the organization does, that Edge Factory does in the LGBT community in Orlando, definitely gives us a good strong name in Orlando. 85% of the work that we do is outside of Orlando, so but having a good standing in our home base, in our hometown really matters. That's why we do what we do in Orlando. And I think it does give us some opportunities. I mean, I know, since I've joined the organization, I've been developing deeper relationships between Edge Factory and, say, PNC Bank and other corporations that see the good work we do here in Orlando and, also have a tighter relationship with us just because, we're kind of in this community together.
Thank you. So Ashley, tell us a little bit more about your role and why PNC is really eager to work with LGBT-owned businesses.
Yeah, so I would say that I'm the National Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion, and part of my role is really building great relationships in the community. And so it's not just LGBT, but also the Hispanic community, women in business, and many other lines of diversity. I will tell you that when I walk in the door as an open transgender woman, I tend to immediately steer the conversation to LGBTQ. But I will say that part of our intentional focus is really deepening the relationship with the community. And we do that through sponsoring events, to partnering in the community, to having our people present at events. I think it's something that we do as a corporate partner of the MBA Orlando locally and a national partner with the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Those are just some examples of like a very small percentage of our partnerships. But it's not just about writing the check. It's about actually showing up and then being present. I think that those pieces are kind of very important, and you can't have one without the other. And then what was the second half of the question?
Just, why are you eager to work with LGBT-owned businesses in particular? And
then so for LGBT businesses in general, I think that we see great value in the economics behind it. The study that was released earlier this year for the $1.7 trillion for the LGBT business community is amazing in itself. And it's good business to think about having our company partner in that community. And we have to use our employees who are openly LGBTQ to make those connections. And then I think that for the business itself, they're going to get a great amount of empowerment from partnering with a major corporation. And I think that when they work together, it tends to break down the barriers and reduce the biases that already exist in many communities.
Yeah. And I think that the report that you had mentioned, so that was a report through the NGLCC, and that was the 1.7 billion or trillion with a T, right? So that was in 2015 alone, right? And so it was LGBT certified businesses and along with all LGBT businesses in the United States, which is huge. So thank you for just kind of adding some context to kind of the power that our businesses bring to the economy.
Yeah, you have to take that seriously. It's the 10th largest economy in the world.
Yeah, it's huge. For 1.4 million business owners. So that's a lot of numbers. Okay. So Thomas, can you tell us a little bit more about MBA Orlando and specifically why the organization is so well positioned to advocate for LGBT businesses like ours?
Absolutely. Yes. So MBA Orlando serves as the LGBT Chamber of Commerce for Central Florida, and it's been in existence actually for 25 years. So it's one of the forerunners of LGBT Chamber of Commerces around the nation. And what started 25 years ago as just LGBT businesses getting together really under a clandestine name, that's why our name is Metropolitan Business Association. It's that way because back then when it was formed, it's because not necessarily everyone wanted to be identified as an LGBT business. But they all wanted to support each other and work together and try to build up LGBT businesses within the community. What we've taken through that with partnership with the NGLCC since it was formed in 2002 is to really be a connector, essentially, as a Chamber of Commerce to take LGBT businesses, those that are certified and even those that aren't yet, that we hope to get certified, and connect them to corporations and even other small to medium businesses in our community, our allied businesses. And through that process, really supporting them and getting them the business, the customers, whatever they need to really flourish in our Central Florida community, not just here locally, but also on a national level through partnership with NGLCC.
Yeah, thank you. And it's such a powerful chamber. And so for folks that don't know, I'm currently living in Portland, Oregon, and so we have our LGBT chamber is called the Portland Area Business Association, so formed for similar reasons, right? A name that doesn't necessarily have LGBT, front and center. So just thinking about the myth of LGBT affluence, I think for folks maybe not as familiar, there's a myth that all LGBT people are really well off and we're driving Mercedes and living the high life. And the reality is that there's a lot of institutional discrimination, it's much harder for LGBT folks to find employment, start their own businesses, and a lot of that comes from discrimination in the workplace, right? So why is it so imperative for the MBA to help our businesses thrive and to expand economic opportunities to lift up LGBT folks, many of us who are disproportionately struggling, right? Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's a very good point. We often run into that when we are talking on the supplier diversity platform with other MBEs, minority business enterprises, that LGBTBs tend to not need the protections or the extra boost, if you will, because of that affluence. But if you look at the numbers, these are done from recent studies. You have 40% of homeless youth are LGBT, so they're already starting at an economic disadvantage. The recent study found that LGBT individuals are 1.7 times more likely to use food stamps than heterosexual people. And you also have them in a poverty level 5 to 7% higher than heterosexual people. So this myth of affluence that you say is real, it's really not that case. And what you have is a lot of individuals, LGBT individuals, who want to get a leg up, who want to be entrepreneurs or start their own businesses. And they need a boost to do that, quite frankly. A lot of them do. Everyone isn't driving Mercedes. Everyone isn't wining and dining at 5-star restaurants in the LGBT community. That is quite the myth. So what MBA does is we try to take those businesses that have an idea, that have a dream, and we bring them in and we connect them, as I said before, to corporations or even other allied individuals in the community that want to use their products, that want to use their business. And we support them in that fashion. So we really we plug them in to the community, for lack of a better word. And through that process, we help get them as much consumers or business, depending on what the business is, as much customers, consumers, whatever, as possible, just to help their business flourish, because it is needed for LGBT business enterprises.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that response. So, Ashley, for PNC, what are some of the ways that you all let LGBT-owned businesses know that you're open and ready to work with LGBT-specific businesses? Is there dedicated outreach to LGBT-owned? Okay.
So, some of what we do is through our dedicated landing pages. So if you go to pnc.com/diversity, you'll see an overview on all of our programming, which is pretty intense. But then even further than that, you can go to pnc.com/LGBTQ, and that will actually take you to all of our LGBTQ programming, including our supplier diversity initiative. That, of course, gets the word out, but there's more to that. And so that's surrounding education of our employees. So when you meet with a banker in a branch, potentially, that person should have been through an inclusive language conversation class to make them more open to understanding around pronouns or spouse names, and those kinds of things can impact the conversation. It can impact your decision to learn about funding or learn about resources. So those things can impact you. And then from a supplier diversity standpoint, as a company, we've actually grown our supplier diversity total spend from 7% to 15% over the last 2.5 years. which is pretty good. And we've included LGBT businesses in that process, and we actually allow them to self-certify as well. So for some of the people who maybe can't be able to pull the certification, maybe there's a barrier to them getting a certification, then we will allow them to say they're LGBTQ, and then include them in that process for the RFP bid process. And then on a local level, we also do some of the really cool stuff where, like if I'm planning an event personally for the bank, I'll actually call like Kelly at the MBA Orlando, and I'll say, hey, I need a bartender, or hey, I need this, or and be intentional in who we're hiring as vendors on a local level. Maybe it's not a national procurement contract, but every little bit that you do to involve suppliers and be purposeful in that decision makes sense.
So relationships are really important, right? What are some of the biggest barriers to finding and letting LGBT-owned businesses know, like, hey, we want to work with you? Do you notice anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of that is some of them aren't wanting to identify, right? Because there's still that. Like a lot of people in the general public seem to think that, oh, we have marriage equality, everything's great, right? So, but workplace protections are lacking. So there's a next process in that. And I think that, so it's public education that this is out there. It's saying, hey, let's have a conversation around me and that fact that I'm a minority. And let's talk about that, because there could be other benefits that go with that and other things that can help you with your business. And connecting you to the chamber is such a great resource. Let's talk about how they have relationships like the one that we have. They have those with several other major corporations. So the supplier diversity piece is just the tip of the iceberg. It's really the communication behind it. And going back to the study, right, the 1.4 million LGBT business owners in America, but only 1,000 are certified. So we have a huge process ahead of us to get the word out and to teach surrounding why it's so important to have that certification. Because a lot of people think, well, if I'm not going to do an RFP, then I don't need it. But there's more to it than that, right? It's not just about whether you can have an RFP. It's also about how you identify and how you can use that to market yourself to your community and grow your business that way.
I think that's a good segue for Debo. So in thinking about Edge Factory, how does being an LGBT-owned business help you all with getting known? Specifically you're talking about the 15% of work that you do in Orlando, right? And how does that help you with earning business here?
Well, Edge Factory positions itself, of course, as a successful creative multimedia company, not a gay-owned company, but they've never shied away from being identified as a gay-owned company, and that the identification with the LGBT community is part of what led Edge Factory to bid on NGLCC and to provide work for NGLCC, which gives us the opportunity, both as a vendor and as an LGBT certified business, to interact with the corporations that come to the NGLCC event. So we definitely have had the opportunity to meet people and have interactions and start building relationships, but have not procured any contracts from that yet being the operative word. Locally...
could you say a little bit more about that process? Because I think for some people thinking about getting certified, there is that perception of like, oh, I didn't get that contract and I had this great conversation with this corporation. It didn't happen overnight.
It never happens overnight.
It's like dating, right?
It really is. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, even when, one of my closest friends works in a high-level position at a large corporation, and he is not the end-all decision maker, and there is a process to go through. Even though he wants to give us the business, I think it probably is going to take at least another 6 months to a year before we actually get something out of that. It's a long game. It's like investing, right, Mike? It's like investing. It is you have to focus on the long term, and these relationships take time to really build. and they have to be genuine. But the thing is that if I identify as LGBT and my boss and the business owner identifies as LGBT, and I connect with somebody like Ashley alluded to, somebody who's LGBT at a corporation, that's a foot in the door to start a conversation and build that relationship, because we have that in common. And one of the great things about the LGBT community is that it covers all other diversities. So we have, right. Yeah. So we definitely have something in common, and we can, start that conversation. But you said locally, so I want to, so locally, a lot of the work that we do locally still actually, believe it or not, comes from national contracts. So the kind of work we do is often corporate meetings, trade shows, events. So stuff that we do locally is happening at the local convention center here, but it often is coming from outside. I really think mostly how it helps us stand out locally is these other relationships. My relationship with Ashley, not just me, but the owners of the business, our relationship with Ashley and other people like her in the community that work for these large corporations, but are local. They see how we stand out because of our involvement in the community, and that matters. And although we're not doing any work for PNC yet.
It's the long game.
It's the long game.
Yeah. Right. So there's a saying that you can go farther alone, or you can go faster alone, but you can go farther together, right? That's the saying. So in terms of thinking about the LGBT business community, how do you see that as helping us kind of grow stronger, build a more vibrant community? Like, what's the role that you see, with Edge Factory and others?
First of all, I love that statement, and I actually just shared that in a meme not too long ago. So yeah, that's cool. The first time I walked into an MBA event, I had this sense of we're all here together. Like we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. And the first time I went to one of the leads group that MBA has, well, not the first time, but one of the times when one of the members of the group had something going on personal, and everybody lined up to give her a hug, and somebody said, you won't get that at a BNI networking event, because we all feel personally connected in some way, because we are all of us at some point or another have experienced some kind of discrimination for our LGBT status. And so we all know what it feels like. And I also think that crosses boundaries, like I said before, you can be Black or Hispanic or Asian or Jewish or Christian, and you can also be gay. And so we have that commonality. And I think it also matters, like an organization like the MBA, that we have so many allies, because really change isn't going to happen without the allies anyway. I mean, if you believe the statistics, we're 10% of the population, so we're not going to have change without the support of the other 90%, or at least a significant amount. So allies matter a lot too. And again, that's how we come together, and a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes, I firmly agree with that. And as someone who used to work at PFLAG National, I'm all about the allies, and shout out to my parents over there, the awesome allies. So Ashley, from a global perspective, tell us a little bit more about how PNC has successfully used supplier diversity to strengthen LGBT communities.
So I think that for us, it's more of sharing of the status. We actually do some really cool things surrounding our Point of View program online, where we'll share content surrounding Pride Month and other events, and we'll also highlight suppliers. Recently, we had a business owner in Orlando that we had featured in Entrepreneurial magazine. So tends to really, we try to highlight as many businesses as we can that meet the criteria of what they're looking for, and really try to share the positive success stories. I think is important. But everything else, I would say, surrounding supplier diversity is really just trying to grow that percentage that I was talking about earlier. And now it's at 15. Let's try to get it.
So do you
let's
have
try
like
to get it to 20.
Where's the
right,
next level?
Next goal,
20. Okay. All right. Very
from
cool.
there on forth. And I think that it comes down to the national. We attend a lot of national conventions, and we're there specifically from a supplier diversity standpoint to try to get people to sign up on our vendor registration list. And it's super easy for anyone who's listening.
It can be intimidating for the small business.
It can be intimidating, but if you need help,
Yeah.
just contact me and we'll help you register. It's very simple. It doesn't cost anything to register on our portal. You can do 1% of it or 100% of it, however you feel. The process is pretty inclusive. And the more businesses that we have that register on that portal, the easier it is to grow that number.
And like to give a flavor to the small business owners in the audience, is it everyone or like what is the vendor portal like?
I think that it could be anything. I mean, if think about everything a bank uses, from real estate to buildings to maintenance to property management to human capital to you name it. We're utilizing coaching, anything that someone does. It's technology. In fact, most of our company is technology now in the financial world. So when you start thinking about that, it really relates to virtually any type of business. If you're selling products, promotional products, we buy those too. So
thank you for sharing that, because I think for some small businesses, it's like, oh, I do this thing.
It's
and
not relatable.
PNC, I'm not going to, it's not for me. Yeah. Right. And so just kind of breaking that down for some of us is helpful. I appreciate that. So Thomas, just kind of thinking about, how we're strengthening our community, building a stronger community. What are some of the ways that MBA gives back locally here in Orlando?
Well, there are a lot of ways. We're connected with pretty much every LGBT organization here in Orlando, and there are a lot of them. We're part of the Alliance, the One Orlando Alliance, that basically is a coalition of all those organizations here in Orlando that was formed in the wake of Pulse. And through that organization, we're able to tap in and be a part of every single one of their missions in a way and help whenever we can in those missions. So we have board members that are part of Equality Florida, which works to pass legislation on the statewide level and on county and city government level to help LGBT individuals throughout the state of Florida. We have people that are involved with Zebra Coalition that helps LGBT homeless youth, so on and so forth. And I think the biggest example of our capability in that regard probably happened in the wake of Pulse, where we helped with gift card drives. We were involved, with bringing people together, helping the victims and their families any way we could. We were out at Camping World Stadium trying to help individuals connect with businesses and needs with whatever they needed, given our membership directory and those that were friendly or allied to the LGBT community and Hispanic and Latino community, Latinx community that was affected. So we're able to, again, it goes back to that role of a connector, but we're able to do that, and we're able to connect people to resources and whatever else they need. And that's really, how we largely give back to the community. We are a go-to for resources that everyone, when they need it, they can go to us and find what they need.
So when you're doing that, how are you leveraging your relationships with corporate partners or small businesses? What does that look like?
Absolutely. So obviously corporations generally are able to give a little bit more than small businesses or medium businesses can. And we're able to reach out to those corporations to, tap into whatever they have to give, a larger amount of money for whatever the immediate need is, and small businesses for whatever they can give. Again, I go back to the Pulse example because that's the most visceral in my mind. We had small businesses giving $10 gift cards, $15 gift, $20, $50, whatever they could give. We had corporations giving $1,000 worth of, gift cards or whatever else they could give. Holding space open to allow organizations to hold meetings without charge, providing, a suite for the PNC Bank. I have to give a shout out to PNC Bank, provided an entire suite for the Demi Lovato and Nick Jonas concert for all of the staff of Pulse that we were able to facilitate. And they had a personal meet and greet with Demi and Nick in that suite. And that was all PNC donating that suite and that food and that space. And we were just a facilitator, again, a connector of that being able to happen. So it's that type of thing that we're able to, so we can tap into those resources that corporations have that small businesses won't. But then again, all the gift cards that we got, which totaled over $10,000, well over $10,000 in $10, $20, $50 amounts from small business owners. I mean, it was incredible.
That is incredible. And so kind of transitioning to talk more about celebrating our authenticity, I wanted to ask you, Thomas, what is the one thing that surprised you the most about working with LGBT business owners in the region?
I can't say it surprised me, but I would have to say the compassion. And Debo touched on this earlier with her comments, but it's really, it's the compassion that every single person I've met, small, medium, or large, business owner, that they have for individuals, for their work, for their community. And when they have, Debo gave the example of everyone giving a hug to anyone who needed it in a leads group. But that's at networking mixers, that's at everything. It's such an open and welcoming community. Yeah. But that compassion bleeds over to their work and their business. They're not, when you see that in real life, that's going to carry over to their business. They're not going to take advantage of you. They're going to be trustworthy, loyal, and compassionate in their business, and as you as a customer or anybody you refer them to. And I've really found that that's held completely true. I don't know of an example where it hasn't. For all businesses that I've known, being a part of the MBA, including our LGBT BEs as well as our allied businesses, they all hold true to that compassion component, and it really allows you to know that you refer somebody to them, they're going to be taken care of, and they're going to give it their all. And I would say that compassion component sets them apart from any other business really that I've seen. And so,
Ashley, on the authenticity piece, for you, from your perspective, what are some of those superpowers that LGBTQ businesses bring to, corporate relationships, like helping you all do your work better? What stands out for you?
I can tell you the trans community has a special superpower. We sometimes have the ability to have lived in multiple genders. Which is a great perspective, I have to tell you. When you pretend to operate in one gender for many years and you kind of learn the run of the rope, something like that is actually very helpful. And honestly, it really helped me in my career because it gave me a look through the looking glass ability to kind of be able to relate better to both genders. And so when I self-identified during the interview, every time I started interviewing at PNC to move up in our company, and including the first time 8 years ago, it was never even a thought as to whether I was trans, if that was going to be a problem or not. And so it was kind of I was kind of celebrated throughout the whole time and every single step. And I try to, I probably mentor at least 50 trans people a year, practically. And it's sometimes just one meeting or I just stay in contact and I, say, hey, how are you doing? Or check on you. It's definitely not a weekly relationship, but when we have conversations with the people in the trans community, it's saying, hey, you can have anything that you want to have. You bring so much value and so much diversity to the conversation. And almost to the point of what Deb was saying earlier around, hey, you could be Hispanic, you could be all these things in the community, your religion, your political affiliation, all these things can be about who you are, but then you could be gay, you could be straight, but you could also be trans in that too. And so I think sometimes people don't realize that you could be both trans and gay, or trans and straight.
Yes.
And,
as someone who's bisexual and trans, yes, the two things do exist.
So it's like, let's make those connections, please. Because having the conversation, I think, is what's so important, and then building others up.
Yep.
Because sometimes they don't even know that they have all this value.
And so just kind of bringing it back to those suppliers that you're working with that are LGBT owned. So you think that kind of unique perspective is
all about the perspective.
Yeah.
And bringing that to perspective and saying, hey, look, you have something that not anyone else can do in your business, because you do it the way that you do it. And you bring the perspective the way that you do it. And no one else does that. And you should own it.
Yes. You just rocked the authenticity question.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So, and Devo on that. So this one's hard. So, so just for you, tell me what it means to bring your whole self to an LGBT-owned business like Edge Factory.
Well, the fact that it's a LGBT-owned business makes it pretty easy, luckily. I had started working at Edge Factory shortly after Pulse, and I was wearing my ribbon, and I never felt like it was inappropriate for me to have my ribbon on. I never thought that, and I go to networking events that are not LGBT. I go to a lot of business events, and I always wear my ribbon, always, and I never feel like I have to take it off. And sometimes it's never noticed, or if it is noticed, nothing's said, but a lot of times somebody says something about it, and it's always in a nice way, just either complimentary or acknowledging what it's from. And so it feels empowering. I came out kind of late in life, so it's, and though I had a great experience coming out, it's empowering to actually be able to get up and go to work and dress the way that I want to dress, and and not, that it's never a factor when I start a conversation with a new client, but I never have to worry what they're going to think when they meet me in person for the first time or something like that. So
yeah, it's a relief,
it wasn't that
right?
hard.
Yeah. Okay, all right, good. Yeah, you're speaking from the heart, so it's it's authentic. Okay, so we've got two more questions, and we're going to throw out, if there's any audience questions or comments. And the last two, it's just kind of general, so if you want to say your comments.
Banter?
Yeah, you can banter, we're going to free flow a little bit. So, and it's all about inspiring the next generation of LGBT business owners. So, and we know, I know that some of us have started businesses of our own here, and that launching a business can sometimes feel super overwhelming. So what's one piece of advice that you'd like to share to inspire those folks just getting started, just to take that first entrepreneurial leap? So anything that comes to mind.
Dovetailing off your last question, I would say, be authentic, give your whole self to that business and plug into the community. Find what you're passionate about, whether that's joining the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, which I would absolutely recommend for any small business, or whether that's, get involved with what you're passionate about, and meet people, let them get to know you, your true authentic self. And when you do that, people will want to work with you. People will trust you, and people will want to give you their money. That's kind of how it works. And it's all about building relationships, and that starts with authenticity, and it goes from there.
I would say just don't be overwhelmed though, because immediately you can get inundated pretty quickly with requests and with this group and that group, and just stick to your authenticity, right? And do the things that are close to your heart, because that will lead to being more authentic, and then branch out in the future as you grow.
Another thing about being your authentic self is also valuing yourself and knowing your worth, which is really important when you're a small business owner. It's okay to say no to that job that's not going to pay you very well. It really is, because it makes room for the jobs that are going to pay you what you're worth. But you have to know your worth. And how do you know your worth if you're not being authentic about yourself?
Yeah, it's finding that no and being okay with that.
Yeah.
And then it's going to open up space.
It really is. And I mean, I can tell you from personal experience and observation, it really is.
But if you say no, then put the work in.
Yeah, absolutely.
While you would have been at that.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, don't just say no and start playing your video games.
Definitely put in that much more work.
Yeah. Oh, and just real quick, also take advantage of resources like the Small Business Development Center here, and that's a free, and I'm guessing they have them in other places. I mean, those are free things that are available. Make use of them,
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, there's a ton of free resources, and the Small Business Development Centers are through the SBA, right? Yeah, and they're all over the country. And things like Score.
Yes, that's the other one. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
And also reach out if you had any former bosses or people that you worked with that you feel like could benefit you. People like to be asked to be a mentor, don't they? I mean, it's flattering. And my old boss is my mentor. I have tea with her once or twice a year, and it's wonderful.
And I would take it a little bit further too, not just a mentor, also have sponsors. And know the difference between a sponsor and a mentor, whereas a mentor is going to be mentoring you when you're there. And you're meeting with that person, and then they're giving you that investment. A sponsor is going to be somebody who's going to be sponsoring you whether you're there or not. And they're going to be talking about you when you're not in the room. And you have to have them in your company, and you have to have them in other companies.
Said like a true D&I expert, right? Like, know the difference, yeah.
Absolutely, and I would only add that, yes, people absolutely do love to be asked to be mentors, but there is such a thing as bad mentors. So when you ask them, just be able to recognize when you don't have the best mentor and move on to the next. But yes, it's very important to find a good, solid mentor.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this is the last question that I have for y'all, and it's a little experimental rock there. Okay, so this is a question. It's December 11th, 2017. The year is ending. We're looking ahead to 2018. So what's our biggest challenge as LGBT business owners, or just being an LGBT business leader? And what's our biggest opportunity? You can take it in whatever direction you want to go.
I would say, from a Chamber of Commerce perspective, the biggest challenge is getting as many LGBT businesses certified as possible to increase our visibility, our capability, and our ability to connect with those larger corporations, and also to continue that drive to connect those businesses to the corporations. But really, I think the biggest challenge is just increasing that visibility. As Ashley mentioned before, we have 1.4 million estimated LGBT businesses in the nation. We only have 1,000 certified. We have a long way to go. And as Harvey Milk said, bringing people out and making your voice heard, it goes a long way. And I think that's our biggest challenge, is to get as many out, to get their voices heard in business, and to help them flourish as much as we can.
I would say that from an LGBT business perspective, to me, I think that the biggest opportunity is that the way that we coexist and get along with others who maybe are not LGBT inclusive, but how we educate them and how we connect with them still. And it's one of those things where I always say that you have to keep dripping, and you have to keep dripping on someone eventually, and then you'll melt them down. And you have to keep providing those positive examples and sharing your positive stories. And it makes me think about when I was coming out and trying to keep telling my father and say, hey, look, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And then every once in a while I would send a positive article or send this or send that. And I never gave up, right? And we're moving the needle. It's moving slow, but we're moving the needle. And I think it's that cultural civility that has to exist across party lines, across lines of diversity, and across everything.
Yeah, the power of those one-on-one conversations are huge, and you've got to have patience.
Our mom said, right? You got to know somebody, right? You have to know. You all know someone that's gay. You all know someone that's trans, right? So it's connecting those dots.
Well, I think, interestingly, what I'm going to say touches on what both of you said about the being out and, like Harvey Milk said, because the people that may not be LGBT inclusive think that they don't know anybody or have a stereotypical idea because of the one person that they do know. And so when they find out that I had this very experience where, somebody that I grew up with who was very strict Catholic, when they found out that I was gay, they were like, but I thought gay people were bad, and Deb's not bad. And so they literally had a seed change. But for a lot of people, it doesn't happen overnight. And you have to be able to give them space to change. What I really have a problem with, and so I think this is one of the challenges, is when somebody, this happened during past political campaigns when somebody said that believed they were in favor of gay marriage, and people said, but they didn't used to say that. And it was like, well, maybe they changed their mind. I mean, it actually happens. And you have to give people space to do that, because if you don't, then they're just not going to. They're going to bear down and stick with this, kind of obstinate position and never change. So you have to be gentle and kind and keep at it and compassionate.
Don't be combative.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so it's basically both of what they said together.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So those are all of my questions. You all are an amazing panel, so I'm enjoying this a lot.
Come back anytime.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to open it up to the audience and just a little engagement. And so how many people are LGBT business owners right now? Okay, awesome. All right. How many people are allies? Yes. Okay, awesome. How many people have listened to the Out Entrepreneur podcast? Yes. All right, we have two former interviewees here, so Tommy and Dina. Awesome. Okay, so those are my questions for you. I'm curious, do you have questions for me or for any of the panelists and what we've shared tonight? Yeah, thank you.
I'm curious what the panel's advice would be for somebody who's, for those business owners who are trying to balance being an out entrepreneur and also gain business being a new business owner.
Yeah.
Because there's always a struggle of, do I hide who I am, or at least not advertise who I am to gain business, or do I present an authentic self every time and risk losing business over time?
Yes, thank you. Let me just repeat that for the recording. So just that balance of negotiating how out you can be in your business with also keeping revenue coming in and working with the clients that you can serve, right?
So I want to say something to that because I've been a business owner also. And first of all, I think, and now I do business development, technically, essentially like sales. And as a salesperson, you have to tailor your presentation to your audience. And I think that's true in business as well. So I think that if you are either unsure about your audience or that your audience may not be as inclusive, then you position yourself very securely in the kind of work you do, the business that you're in, how that you are talented, successful, whatever it is that positions you as an expert in your field, and that's what you go with. But if you know that your audience is more LGBT inclusive, then you definitely can color all of that expertise with the rainbow and present that as well. But I don't think you ever hide who you are, and I think that's the most important thing. It just may not be the first foot that you put forward, but you're not hiding it. It's, you're still wearing your ribbon to the networking event.
Absolutely. I think that's right, Debo. I think there's this myth to, being your authentic self or authenticity sometimes that you have to lead with, I'm LGBT and wave the rainbow flag. But that's not what it's about. It's just being honest with yourself and being strategic with how you present things. You don't see heterosexual people go into business pitches and say, I'm heterosexual and this is why you should buy my product. It just doesn't happen, right? I mean, so it doesn't have to happen for us. But like Debo said, if you know your audience, and if you know that's going to be a big selling point or important point, lead with it or put it to the front. But you don't. To be authentic, you don't have to shout it from the mountaintops all the time. You can still be authentic and in yourself and in your business without necessarily doing that every time.
And I was just going to say, do your research. I mean, online, you can find out anything about anyone in any company that you want. I know that when I was looking for employment, I was looking at, before I had a call with any company or an in-person interview, I was looking to see what their public policies were, what their EEOC statement is. Those kinds of things can tell you a lot about an organization really quickly, depending on the verbiage that they use. And if you ever have a question around the EEOC statement, let me know.
Nice.
I'll help you with that.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. And just kind of to your question is really thinking about who your dream clients are, right? If you are imagining your industry, hopefully your industry has folks within it that are accepting and open, really kind of, when you do your marketing avatar of like, this is who I want to work with, kind of put more of that out there. And, there is something to, the law of attraction, right? So, but it is a challenge. And on the show, we actually talk about that a lot of negotiating. This was a really hard time, in my business of trying to just be who I am and also like hang on to this contract because it's keeping the lights on. And that's a challenge, especially when you're first getting started. So thank you for asking that. It's something that pops up a lot. Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
I've been around a long time. And if you think about the LGBT community over, I'll just say since the late 70s, it's changed quite a bit. And, as you think about the letters of the alphabet and how well they play together, I think, I guess I'd like to hear from each of you, when it comes to the letters of the alphabet playing well together, what impact has your involvement with an organization like MBA had on that and your perception of that?
Yeah, so just for the, so let me see if I have it right. So just kind of how, yeah, right? So how well do all of the letters of the ever-expanding LGBTQ plus acronym kind of work together in a business environment and in an organization like MBA? Did I get that right?
Well, I think, and I'll just say my observation.
Sure.
My observation is that groups that were socially exclusive of one another in many ways,
Gotcha.
What I'll call back in my day, you join an organization like MBA Orlando or the NGLCC, and it opens new doors to greater appreciation for the other letters of the alphabet who maybe have a similar mission to yours.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So also, how well do the letters of the alphabet play together, and then how much learning happens when you're working in an organization or being a part of an organization like MBA Orlando? So.
Yeah, I don't want to, but I just got excited again. Because I know that like the current president of the board of the MBA has made a very personal mission to be more inclusive of other letters of the alphabet. Even the silent letters have been the B and the T for a very long time. And even the T gets a lot of recognition, and still the B is kind of it's not a real thing. It's just a phase. You're just going through a phase.
It's a really long phase.
So I know that she's made it a point. I mean, she's also a B and wrote an article about it for the newsletter, and people responded and were like, "Oh my God, me too!" And and she's invited a lot of folks from the local transgender community to participate in a lot of the events. It's really important. And I think that it took an outward personal effort to bring people in. But once they're in, like you said, the door's open, we're in the same room together, we share the space, we share the community, we recognize we all deal with the same situations, and, and then suddenly we end up building these great friendships across those letters.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I agree with everything Debo said, and this is just an observation because, I know how the community was by observation and hearing stories of people where it tended to be, as you said, Thor, like silo, just supporting each other, not really reaching out, just trying to bolster each other up internally, and it's moved to more of a trying to instead of just each other bolstering ourselves up, it's moved to external forces trying to bolster the community up as a whole. And I think that's just a sign of where we're going, where we want to go, which is, honestly, complete inclusivity, right? To the point where we don't have to have these conversations anymore. I think that's the end goal. I think we're a long way from it, but I think that's the end goal. And I think we need to get everyone on the same playing field, LGBT businesses included. And I would love the day, decades from now, when we don't have to have these type of conversations anymore and we can all just be. But I think, an important journey to getting there is to build up our own communities to the point where we can all start interacting with each other and with the allied straight white male community as well, and everyone else to just coexist, right? And I think there's been a movement. I think back in the 70s and 80s, it was a survival in a way, for lack of a better word. It was just trying to survive, trying to find like-minded individuals to just survive, to exist. And I think we're moving into a realm where we're hoping to coexist, and that's what we're really pushing for with all these things.
Yeah. I was just going to say, going back in time, right? The history is not on the side of LGBT working together. And I'm saying that so nicely. And I think about Stonewall, and I think about things that happened in our time frame, and things that happened before my time. And but being often ever present, aware of history is important to make sure we don't repeat it. I see a lot of the chambers of commerce across the country, LGBT chambers, working to partner more with transgender individuals. I just actually 2 weeks ago was speaking in Maryland at the Maryland LGBT Chamber of Commerce. We did a transgender workplace forum. And so the content surrounding the community is important. And then here locally, they have the best sub-organization. It's almost like its own organization, but not quite. The T Network is an amazing partnership with the MBA Orlando, and every month they host as many as, I think the one I hosted one at PNC, and we had almost 70 trans people and allies attending, and it was amazing. And to see the impact and see how excited those people were that a business was partnering with them and opening up their doors, and we were there, and we connected, and we were talking about human resources wins and ways to position your resume to highlight the fact that you're transgender instead of making it a negative, because for so many years we were not coming out and we were just fading into the cisgender world. It was transition as much as you can to get to the point where you seem cisgender so you can operate in society, and then don't be a part of the LGBT community because you don't know that you're going to get supported there. And I think we're changing that, but it has to happen from the partner organizations have to be working together to be intentional, and then the companies and the other businesses have to be intentional as well.
I think that's great. I think this is fantastic, and I think on that note too, we're seeing an evolution, and the NGLCC they rebranded, right? So now it's the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, right? It's still the NGLCC, but inclusive, right?
Yeah, which was really cool.
It's huge
because Justin contacted me, and we worked to identify many different transgender people from all different diversity lines to go up on stage to share the announcement together. which was amazing.
Yeah, and that was in November, right? So we got a little bit of the backstory. Was there anything else in the backstory of how that? Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize that we were going to have so much speaking.
Yeah.
I thought we were just going out and saying the name.
The name changed. No, it was great. So that happened.
But yeah, it was pretty impactful.
Yeah, it's very meaningful.
To have to get to meet the other people behind the scenes, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is it. This was fantastic. So thank you all for being here and for asking great questions, and for our panelists. We're going to do a raffle after we kind of say goodbye to our online audience. So thanks for everyone who tuned in. It's a really, really, really fantastic evening. So if you haven't given the podcast to listen to, I definitely recommend that. So you can find it on iTunes, Apple, or Google, like all of the places where you would find a podcast. You can also find it at www.outentrepreneur.com. So definitely check that out. And with that, goodbye to our audience online.